the underlying feeling of wanting to do something.
Yeah.
It's kind of like long-term inspiration, I guess. If you
yeah,
could stretch the joy of really wanting to sculpt right now over to a feeling which is, I don't want to sculpt right now, but I really enjoy the feeling of sculpting. You want to become better at it. It's kind of like having a long-term goal.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a good way to put it. I think motivation is the most evil thing in the world because it's the one that people try to exploit in other people. Like they try to take whatever goals that people have and then they try to sell them a program about motivation.
Yeah.
And then they get the program and then it's about how to sell the program about motivation to other people and stuff. So it's like, that's why this subject is so tricky. Like we had a talk about, we've been talking about this all morning, trying to sort of figure out the best way to approach this. And for me personally, the reason this subject is so hard to talk about is because I don't know. Like honestly, like if it just on the spot and I had to come up with, what's your motivation? Why are you doing this? I'd be like, I don't know. I've been doing this for the last 10 years.
Yeah, for
and
15 almost.
Yeah, so it's just a thing that's just so ingrained in me now that I can't remember a time where I didn't feel motivated to do the things that...
Things started when working on an email, and it was like somebody asking, how do you stay motivated? And we're like, how do you stay motivated? Like that's actually really tricky. So we had to talk long and hard just to be able to get back to the email. Because we could write some pseudo-inspirational stuff like, you know, you gotta believe in yourself. But that's not really that helpful, I think. No. So incredibly tricky topic for us to actually talk about.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it.
Let's actually start to get into some stuff here. So one of the things a lot of people ask us is, how do you get started? Like they were like, once your engine gets rolling, then you're fine. Once the wheels are going here, how do you actually get started? How do you form habits here? We're not necessarily talking about how do you get started with this specific personal piece, though that can be it as well. How do you get started with art and how do you just keep it going? I think you just gotta do it.
It's so stupid because this video it can be boiled down to some super simple things where instead of you go home, you're like, man, I just want to Netflix and chill all night, but I also really want a career as a character artist, then maybe don't go home and Netflix and chill all night.
Yeah.
Like
exactly.
Today was that day where you could start it. It's like every day that you postpone it is just a longer, it just takes longer for you to get there. I remember we talked about that with it's like a couple years ago with like someone who was 42 and let's say they were 42 and they're like, oh man, I don't have an education, but I really want to be an engineer. And so let's say the engineer thing, it took 4 years. I don't know how long it takes, but let's say 4 years. We're like, okay, I can either be 46, which is math, yes. I can either be 46 and not be an engineer, or I can start my engineer degree and be 46 with an engineer degree.
That thinking changed my life. This
Exactly.
was a Reddit post, and it was talking about that. It was about one of the most motivational thing they've heard, and that is really it. And in this case, he doesn't wake up every day and be like, man, I really want to become an engineer, and just doing like little bursts of motivation here, inspiration. In this case, it was hard work.
Yeah.
But I really think that changed the way I was thinking about it. Like I'm going to be starting like martial arts now fairly soon, in like a few hours, and then it's like in a few years I could become pretty proficient at it, or I could not be. It was the same with CG as well. When we started out, it was like a few years, I could become pretty good at CG, pretty good drawing, sculpting, or I could not. And the not part wasn't an option for me. Then if you could replace it with something else, let's say it is, I could become a really good sculptor, or I mean, whatever it is, it could be drawing or good at languages or whatnot. If it is between becoming a good sculptor or taking care of your family, I mean, then it's a different thing here. But if it's between becoming a good sculptor or nothing else,
I think that sort of the thing about age, like you'll be 30, 40, 50 at some point anyway.
Yeah, hopefully.
Hopefully. Do you want to get to that point and not have achieved what you wanted to achieve? Because you were just too lazy to start it?
Yeah.
I mean, you might as well try.
Yeah.
You know, maybe you find out it's not for you, or you find out it's too hard, you don't really feel like you have the skills for whatever, but at least at least then you tried and you figured out you didn't like it.
Yeah, that's fair enough. It's funny with age because there are some people who's like in their 60s and they're like, should I be trying it? Because maybe they have 10 years of their professional life left. And that is like, all right, you are getting into a more advanced age here. But most of the people who ask me that, they're like 21. What are you talking about? In the US, you've been able to drink for like a few months.
Yeah.
Like, you can always start. You can always do this. But particularly, I know most of our audience is in their 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
At that point, you are super young.
Yeah.
You can do anything. It takes a few years of hard work to get up to a certain level. But that means that in a few years, you are at that level. I mean, in order to go from 0 to a level in particularly sculpting here, where you can do something adequate, maybe you're talking 2 years of determined sculpting. If you're 21, you're 23. Nobody cares. You look the same. You're the same person.
Yeah.
It's insane to me. Just the whole thing of you are now 21 in 4 years. You'll be 4 years older, but you can just have the skills or you cannot have the skills. Yeah. Completely changed the way I've been thinking about stuff.
Yeah, there was a guy that messaged me the other day as well. Not so much about motivation, but just in terms of acquiring skills, which I think is relatable. He was talking about, applying for a school and doing a course online. And this course was like a drawing course advertised for beginners. And he was like, okay, yeah, I'll sign up for that. He has no drawing experience whatsoever, as far as I could understand. And then he realized he actually needed some sort of fundamentals for this drawing course and messaged me and was like, okay, so do you think it's feasible that I can learn the fundamentals of drawing if I do 10 hours a day for a week? No, that's impossible. Like, because the thing about, so especially, it doesn't matter if it's art or if it's, I don't know, use engineering again or whatever. Yeah. There's so many concepts that you have to learn within a field or an industry or something that just, it's repeated exposure over long periods of time, like consistent exposure again and again. And then you start to get like, when he asked me, there's nothing bad about it. It's just like, this is the example. I started thinking about what are drawing fundamentals. Like I don't know. Like I've been drawing for many, many years now. And I'm like, I'm okay at drawing. I mostly do 3D now. Yeah. But when I first started drawing, it was like the classical drawing, like with charcoal and figure drawing, that kind of stuff. I don't think about fundamentals anymore. I don't think about weight consciously. I don't consciously think about shadow, perspective. It's something that you learn over time. It's not something you can learn in a week. It's the same thing with sculpting. You can't learn the fundamentals of sculpting in a week. It's just something that takes time. And once you get to that point, I think then it becomes more fun. Like that's where you need discipline. For that, the first year, 2 years, however long it takes to get you up to speed with those fundamentals, that's where you need discipline to keep you going, because it's not, you can totally enjoy what you're doing and enjoy the tasks and enjoy, okay, I want to get to that level, but you might still be creating art that looks kind of like poop. And
that's going to take some time to get out of.
And we still create stuff that looks like poop in the beginning.
We just want to show you.
Yeah. But even the pieces that turn out well, they have a poop stage.
Yeah.
And you need to work through that. That's where your discipline goes. Okay, it doesn't matter if I feel like this looks like a pile of trash right now, but I need to get through this.
I think what you're talking about here with like drawing fundamentals is so important, because when I really started to draw here, I was during animation workshop. I've been drawing for years before that, but I was trash at it. I could draw portraits of celebrities, and they were pretty decent portraits, but that's just monkey see, monkey do. You're just copying here. Yeah. Truly learning drawing fundamentals to me wasn't so much understand a 2-point perspective or like specifically how to like render with a pencil or something like that. It was understanding volume, like intuitively understanding volume, where you can just put down some pencil marks on a piece of paper and you understood the volume. You could kind of like, you got the perspective kind of free. And I'm not really talking about the perspective lines here. It was just understanding intuitively the volume. And that is what takes time. You can't just brute force that. That took me 8 months, I think, to intuitively understand. And I was doing that every single day for hours. This is something you can't just do a sprint on. You can't just go, I'm just going to be crunching this for like 10 hours and then you learn it. your mind takes time to develop these things here.
Yeah.
It's not just so much talking about specifically the hours you put in, like the whole 10,000 hours thing. I think is complete bullshit and has absolutely no basis in science. But it's just, you just got to spend time to learn these things here. Yeah. Learning fundamentals here is not just so much about the hours, but it's also just so much about how much linear time has passed here. Maybe you need like I think maybe 2-3 hours a day over like every single day over like a week, 2 weeks might be better than like, I don't know, like what would that be, like 20 hours or so in a single day. You gotta space it out because it takes time for your mind to learn this. It's kind of like with workout as well. You can't just work out for 10 hours a day. No, you got to do 2 hours for 5 days here because your mind has to recover. Your body has to recover from learning. You got to sleep. You got to put it into from your short-term memory to your long-term memory. And this takes a lot of time.
That's really something that I started taking more and more seriously when I got back into language learning. So currently Henning is learning Chinese and I'm learning Japanese.
Good fun.
I actually started learning Japanese the first time when I was around 16. That's where my inner weeb sort of peaked out a little bit. You know, listened to some Japanese music, tried to watch some anime. Wasn't really for me. Then again, when I was around 20, I think. That's when I really started to, because the reason it failed when I was 16 was because I had literally no goal or motivation with learning Japanese. It was like, this is kind of cool, I guess. When I was 20, my girlfriend at the time, she had worked in Japan for a couple months, and we started talking about it. I was like, that sounds really cool. I didn't really know anything about Japan, and I started looking into it. I was like, kanji looks pretty badass. I was like, I would like to learn to write that. That looks cool. I started learning more about the language. I thought the language sounds pretty nice. Looked at more anime. Still couldn't get into anime, but you know, as a
get into that.
As a proficient weeb nowadays, I have to watch anime. So, but it's like the cramming is really what I started taking seriously, or the not cramming, I should say, where if I sit and I just rep out kanji and vocab for 8 hours a day, my brain is dead.
Yeah.
After I know personally that I can do it for about an hour and a half to 2 hours of intense study, then I need to take a break.
Yeah.
And maybe that is all I do that day. Or maybe if I take a break of an hour or so, maybe 4 or 5 hours, then I come back to it again and I do another hour or two. That works for me personally. Yeah. Henning and I talked about this. I don't know if this is the correct term for the method. We're calling it the 30-30 method. I think the 30-30 method is a little extreme. It's where you do something that you want to do, like you're working towards becoming a character artist. So you sculpt a foot for 30 minutes. Then you reward yourself for 30 minutes. Like now you watch whatever. You watch YouTube videos of cats because that's really what you enjoy. And then you go back.
That's what I do most of the time.
Then you go back and you work for 30 minutes. So it's like work, play, 30 minutes. I think 30-30 might be a little extreme. I would say more like maybe you work for 40 minutes and then you take a 10-minute break or something where you do something you enjoy. Or maybe go for a walk.
Yeah.
But the whole cramming, personally, I don't think it's good for learning, whether you're learning, language or, again, becoming an engineer or a character artist, whatever it is. I think your brain has like this... It needs to internalize a lot of the things that you've just learned. Yeah. And if you're trying to cram in a lot in a day, unless you have some sort of Rain Man memory, I think your brain is naturally just going to latch onto the things that it thinks is most important.
Yeah. And you got to sleep. You actually just got to sleep between the sessions. Like, I can't stress how important that is. There's a lot of research coming out now just on the importance of sleep. And we actually be talking about doing a separate episode on that, because that topic is just so important. But when you are learning, you just got to rest in between and get proper 8 hours of sleep. I absolutely despise this thing we're seeing online now where you're like, guys, I didn't sleep. I got like 3 hours and because I worked so hard. Yeah, cool. You're not now going to be inefficient for next week.
It's actually, just as a quick, not to talk too much about the Japanese stuff, because I don't know if it has nothing to do with motivation. Maybe we can get in there.
Yeah, we can get in there. Go for it.
With the sleep specifically, I noticed that. So I'm using an application called Anki for my kanji, and when I sleep properly, 8 hours, like uninterrupted sleep, my retention rate for remembering things in the past week or month is around 90 to 95%. When I don't sleep, that drops by 10% consistently. It's consistent.
And that's one night of bad sleep.
That's one night of bad sleep where I get maybe 6 hours.
And now imagine if you have consistent 6 hours. Like, you're just not functional. No. It's like being drunk, and well, how much fun that might be. I mean, it's not really a good long-term strategy for that.
Yeah, no, I think that is hard. So if you're consistently seeing that it's hard for you to stay motivated because you don't feel like you're learning the things, you can't remember where the bridge button in Maya is or whatever. Maybe it's because you need to also fix your sleep.
Yeah. I've seen it so many times where you're playing a game and you just can't get this bloody thing right. I'm just playing the new Donkey Kong game on the Switch. It's such a stupid example. And it was a boss there. I just couldn't get it right. And I tried for like legit 2 hours. I'm so frustrated. Wake up the next morning, first try.
Yeah.
And like nothing changed there. But your mind just kind of like cemented what was happening there. It put all the knowledge from short-term memory into long-term memory. Yeah. And it just kind of stored it in a more efficient way. It processed it.
I think that's where it's interesting. I think that's a good example of getting an intuitive understanding of something. You know, something silly as it's just a video game.
It's Donkey Kong.
I've had that with Dark Souls as well, where I go to sleep and the next day I do it first try.
Yeah.
Because
every time,
because all of a sudden, instead of, first of all, now you're not filled with rage anymore. That kind of is annoying. But your brain has sort of figured out the patterns. After you've been sleeping, that's now stored in your long-term memory. And then once you start doing it again, you're like, oh, okay, that's how I do it.
Yeah. Same with 3D as well. It's really interesting how it works, and how you can take Donkey Kong knowledge into 3D.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's also interesting with the whole with discipline as well and language learning, because I mean we can't just talk about 3D here because there are parallels here.
Yeah.
And also with 3D, it's so long ago since we actually learned this.
We don't remember anymore.
It's actually really hard, and it's been like such a long process here. But like specifically for me learning Chinese, which is a ridiculously hard thing to do, it might be one of the hardest things. If I only did that when I felt super inspired, I would never do it. I would have failed a long time ago. I've been doing it for a year and a half now, and it's like if you can just keep, let's say you're doing like 1 word a day. Then you're up to like 365 a year. If you do 2 words a day, you double that. 3 words a day, and you're like almost 2,000 words in a year. I mean, that's pretty cool, and that's only 3 words a day. And then you have 2,000 a year. Then you have 2,000 a year, and then you do this for 5 years. Suddenly, you know, up to 10,000 words, and that's just by doing 3 words a day.
Yeah,
like that is not that hard. It's like if you were. We did the same thing with sculpting as well. During my last year of uni, or last couple of years there, I just sculpted every single day. And that stuff matters. Like this kind of stuff accumulates. In order to learn sculpting specifically, or anything for that matter, you just got to do it a lot. There isn't like the one sculpt where you're now fluent in sculpting or fluent in a language. It takes maybe like 500 sculpts to do it. You just got to get through them. Yeah. You just got to have the discipline to get through them, even if you aren't feeling it that day. You got to spend an hour, 2 hours to sculpt in this thing here. And let's say you have a day where you're really not feeling it. Do a simpler study. Take a study of just eyes. Do a monster eye. Do like a tiger, whatever it might be. Just do one specific part and just focus on that. Something which is not super hard. We had that now with flip normals as well. Where you have days where you're just not feeling it. And you just got to go, all right, today is a simpler day. It's not a non-zero day. Well, rather, it's not a 0 day where you get nothing done. It's just a day where you just do something simpler.
Yeah.
Still productive, but it doesn't break your brain.
Yeah, I mean, we had that the other day where the heat in the UK has been intense.
And we have no infrastructure for that whatsoever.
No air conditioning, no cooling, not anything.
No.
So,
sitting shirtless recording.
No video.
No video, thank God.
But, you know, so the heat really got to me, but I still need to get some work done.
Yeah.
So it was just, okay, delegate out pleb tasks to me, where I just go monkey see, monkey do, and then I do that for a couple hours, and then I finish, because that's what I could do that day. Yeah. But it's still about just getting the work done. Yeah. Of course, I think it's important to mention that you will just have days where you feel like a potato. Yeah. And that's, you take a potato day.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's a potato week, where you just go, you know what, I'm just going to live in nature for a week now with the squirrels or something. Because it's also getting that break. So it's like, I feel like there are two kinds of breaks in order to stay motivated. It's like, one is you don't try to cram everything into an 8-hour period and just sit there. And the other is you don't try to cram everything into a year. You have to consider your life, your hobbies, family. These are all also things that, it might seem a little, I guess, counterproductive, but you have the whole, I want to be better at sculpting, and I want to be really good at sculpting in 5 years. So I just gotta sit there, discipline, do the work until I'm done. This thing is, you're never done. But
What?
you also have to consider what comes after, what's in between, because it's not just. I think motivation could be more things than just. Let's say your goal was to become a character artist. You want to work on big VFX films and stuff. But you have your family that can help you stay motivated. They're like, oh, this is really cool. I mean, your family's always going to love what you show them anyway.
Yeah, put your sculpt in the fridge.
Exactly. You're like, oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, hopefully they do.
Yeah, hopefully. Or find people. Not. I wouldn't say to like, it's not like fake. Don't seek out fake motivation.
No.
It's not like, that's why we've raged a lot about the whole posting on Facebook, because it's always just like, oh, this is great. Yeah, this is the best thing I've ever seen, even though it's not. But, that or seeking out people, like-minded people that can help you stay motivated, because you can motivate each other. Yeah. And then you think about, okay, what comes after this character artist's life? Maybe it's family, or maybe you've destroyed your body by sitting in front of a computer for 12 hours a day.
That's going to totally destroy your body.
And you didn't do any fitness at all. Yeah. Like, I've had that issue. I've had massive issues with my back because I chose to not do that. I was just sitting, grinding without any regard for my health. And that affects me now. I
was doing that during uni. I was wearing like gloves on both, like arthritis gloves on both my hand and arms, and I was like 20. And I should have been fit. I was fit as well. I was doing a bunch of workout, but I would work till like 2-3 a.m. and that was insane. Get 2-3 a.m. and get 4 to 6 hours of sleep, and sure, I got a lot of stuff done, but at what cost?
Yeah,
I would much rather be. I wouldn't even say slower, because if you can't work 10 hours a day, then you can work 5 hours, but that might not be less productive.
No,
it just.
You'd probably be more efficient doing less work.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, what we're doing with Flip Normals now, we've been going since 2013. We're going for almost 5 full years now.
Wow.
This is a long project. I know we only became super active here in January, but there has been a lot of stuff under the hood. Like building this up here, our YouTube isn't just the only part of this, of Flip Normals. It's a huge part here. So we have essentially been working like 3 to 4 hours every single day after work. And we've had full-time jobs in VFX as character artists. Like, this wasn't like we were not working like 2 hours spare time or something. We had to provide for ourselves.
Yeah.
And we had to build up our career at the same time. And that has been really, really hard.
That's where I think you have to have that combination of, like, for me, inspiration hasn't played a factor in that.
No.
But the combination of discipline and motivation has.
Yes.
So, like a standard day. So here's a little thing that you might not know. So we have Flip Normals, right? We also have a secret company.
Yeah, more on that later.
So we have 2 companies, and we've had those 2 companies. So Flip Normals for
5 years.
5 years, and the other one for 2 years now. And then there was a full-time job.
Yes.
So go to work, come in at 9, 10, and leave at 6. You come home, it's 7. You have to eat.
Yeah.
And then it's just, well, we need to get this stuff out. So you start working at 7:30 or 8. Then you do that for a couple hours, 3-4 hours and stuff. And then you go to sleep.
Yeah.
And then you do that again. So it's like, it's kind of this thing of like, it's not the most healthy thing.
No.
But that was our discipline, just told us to keep going because we were so motivated to go full-time on Flip Normals.
Yeah. And we are.
Yeah.
We've been full-time for Flip Normals now for the last month and a half. And it's fantastic.
Yeah.
So I really can't stress how important the discipline part of that has been. Like, when you've been working like essentially 10-12 hour days for like 2 years, you're not like, fuck yeah, let's do it, this is awesome. You are like, this is not amazing, but I can see the light at the end of the tunnel here. And we could see that if we just keep pushing this, then there is something greater. But if that was my life, doing 3 jobs at the same time for 12-hour days, like that's not sustainable. Like that's also where we had time where we just like we took a week off each. It's like now this is Donkey Kong time.
Yeah,
this is Breath of the Wild on the Switch. You're lying in bed as a potato and you're just kind of trying to recover. So I wouldn't really advise anyone to do 3 companies at one time. No, because that is just ludicrous while you're building your career.
We're trying to give you all these tips and tricks, but the reason is like we've fallen into so many of these pitfalls ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. So
I think that's why it's actually really good to talk about, because we've been derps about this as well.
For sure.
Like we've messed up things where it's like, oh, maybe we shouldn't have done this. Maybe we should approach it this way. Like Henning said with now it's just video game time. I had 3 weeks where I only played Zelda. Yeah. Like when it came out for the Switch, and that's all I did. Yeah. And it was so nice to get that break. And then you come back to it. That's what we talked about. Maybe take a week off.
Yeah.
You come back to it. Now you feel refreshed. Maybe you got a new perspective on something. You're like, oh, okay, now I'm motivated to keep going this way. Maybe your motivation changes because of it.
For sure. One thing as well, which you're kind of alluding to here, is that if you want to do great things, let's say you want to work at Blizzard at something or Pixar or whatever it might be, that's hard to do. Like that is genuinely a really tricky thing to do. Every single person who's working at Blizzard doing like what you want to do, they've had to sacrifice a lot of things. They're most likely they had to move from their hometown.
Yeah.
That is like the first one, which means that first off, it's going to be harder to see your friends and family. I mean, I'm not from London.
We had to move country.
We had to move country. I've lived in. By the time I was 23, I lived in 3 countries. Like that is honestly hard to do. But it's like if you gotta do it, you gotta do it. You gotta sacrifice certain things here, and that's not just like to sound depressing here. It's just that there are just things you can't have it all. You can't. Most likely, you can't live with your friends and family, have all the spare time in the world, Netflix and chill every single day, stay up to date on all the games, and just really, like, you go to the beach and all these kind of crazy things while you are working at a major company. Like, it requires sacrifice here. But this is also where you gotta have hobbies and you gotta have a life next to it, because otherwise you'll quit Blizzard in 5 years and you're like, well, that wasn't worth it. You worked on a lot of cool stuff. But it's like we talked about in one of our last videos. It does become a job. Yeah. So you got to have a balance here. But I just want to stress this, that you do have to sacrifice something at some point here. I mean, not saying that you got to just go crazy and sacrifice like a ceremonial goat or something. Like, don't just do it for no purpose here. Like there is no God which requires the blood of the innocent here. It's just that in order to learn this, let's say you're a beginner and you want to. I know we keep talking about sculpting because that's just our thing, but you want to become a drawer. You want to become an illustrator. That takes time to learn. The whole 10,000 hours thing is bullshit, because 10,000 hours, but it just represents a buttload of time.
Yeah.
You just got to spend a crazy amount of time learning it, and your competition will spend just as much time as you are.
Yeah.
So in order to do that, you can't play video games every single day. Maybe you can do it once you reach your goals. Then you can take a step back and play video games and do all that kind of stuff. I hadn't really played video games in like years now. The only reason I could is because I bought a Switch.
Yeah.
And I could it was portable. So I think that's important.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I have a friend who sort of, I think, chose to balance his life in a unfortunate way when it came to sort of like the sort of creative path, where instead of splitting his time between the creative, he doesn't want to do this anymore because he didn't, I don't know, maybe it was like 6 or 7 years of trying to do this and repeatedly didn't really get that far. Skills kind of stayed the same, and I think obviously I don't know. Maybe the motivation wasn't there from the beginning, or maybe I don't know. Maybe he just didn't feel it. But I've seen that a lot, where people that end up in that position, they're the kind of people that start to gravitate towards finding methods to keep them motivated. And I think if you're trying to find methods to keep you motivated, then maybe you have to rethink why you're doing the thing you're doing. It's like maybe I'll piss more people off, but I hate people. I hate when people make lists. Okay, it's like it's more like you can totally keep a list, but it's the whole list people mentality of like I have to have a list of my goals, and so I need to know what my goals are. I can't have any long-term goals because when I reach my long-term goal, then I don't know what to do anymore and stuff. And I think if you've reached the point where you're trying to find a method to keep you motivated, maybe either rethink why you're doing the thing you're doing. Maybe you can still, find that motivation and find the original motivation to why you wanted to do this in the beginning. Maybe it was you wanted to become a game artist at a Blizzard or something. But there is also a point where if you're latching on to things and desperately trying to figure out how to stay within the field and motivated, maybe it's not for you.
Yeah. Now, to be clear on lists are awesome. Just use them for the right thing.
Yeah,
we had actually people here talking about specific lists, because I asked a bunch of people here, and they were like, lists are awesome if you want to, it's internally in a project. One thing we can talk about here is kind of like, you have a huge project here, and how do you do it? It might take like 3 months to do, because big projects are just time consuming. And if you're just going now, oh boy, that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And you're looking at the entire thing here, that is crazy. I mean, you can't really perceive of all that. Maybe it takes like 300 hours to do. That is a lot of stuff to have in your mind at any one point here.
Yeah, you need to break it down.
You got to break it down here. So we had some people who approached me personally on Twitter saying that what they would do, they would make lists. So this is not to shit on your point, because that's totally valid. It's just that in this case, they would just break the project down into smaller tasks. That's something we keep doing as well.
Yeah.
It's like you're doing like this.
I mean, we have a list right here, about what this video is about.
Yeah, exactly. So if you have this massive project here, let's say you're doing a massive personal piece which has like 30 assets and needs to be rigged and everything. If you're going like, oh shit, that's a lot of stuff. Can't do that. You've got to break it down into, okay, how many characters are there? What props do they have? Let's say it's one character and it has 3 props. It's holding a gun and has a helmet. Then you've got to just figure out, you just got to start with, okay, model the character, then model a prop, then model helmet, then texture the thing, and then light it, and just be methodical about it. You really need to break bigger projects down into smaller pieces here.
Yeah.
And because it's like what we're talking about, like if you want to become fluent in a language, or if you want to learn sculpting, there isn't like the event where you learn it. There is not like you wake up and you're like, you see a light bulb, ding, and now you know sculpting. It's a time process. It really just takes time to learn these kind of things. Same with the project as well. You're not just like, well, I guess you do have a point where the project is done, but it's not like you're just grinding and suddenly it becomes done. It's an iterative process where it becomes 5% better for every single asset you're doing. Now this one is done, move on to the next asset, then the next asset, and then at the end of it, you just have a finished product here.
Yeah.
You really just gotta think of it as a bunch of smaller steps. And then like you can do anything. If something is really hard, let's say you have a really hard asset to model, like you have a crazy hard gun to model. Well, you're like, oh shit, that's pretty hard. Break it down into the individual pieces. Can you model each individual piece? Can you do that? If you can, then you just assemble the gun from all these individual pieces. And again, if something is too hard, break it into smaller chunks.
Yeah.
That has been maybe the most helpful thing I've done when it comes to approaching bigger tasks here. And that was a really common question as well, which we got when I approached this video here.
I think another way to, because it's not to say that if you don't feel like you have the motivation, you should just quit.
No.
There's a point, obviously, where you might have to start rethinking that. But, there are definitely steps that you can take to boost your motivation. And, we were talking about, one of the things is to keep track of your progress, which I think is really cool. Obviously, if you make a portfolio, but it's like, at least then I know it's there. I could just save it to a hard drive or whatever, but those might get lost. I could upload it to Dropbox, blah, blah, blah. But I think it's good to have a record of all the things that I've done. It's cool to look back. And then you can also see, okay, this is where I was a year ago. Oh, maybe I should do the same project. And see how I've improved, but don't do the like silly Facebook ones where you actually make a worse one. Because I see that a lot. It's like, oh yeah, I started drawing 10 years ago, and now my drawing is actually worse.
Yeah,
but
we see that.
It's more comparing yourself to your former self is an interesting way to try to boost your motivation. Hopefully you've improved in that period. Otherwise, I guess it can be demotivating.
Yeah.
You should have improved if you've just been keeping up consistently, doing the work consistently.
I think that's so important. Like the moment you start comparing yourself to people in ArtStation and all these crazy places, ArtStation is essentially a representation as a slice of life of the best artists in the world. And they're all represented on the front page there in all the different categories where they are the expert on that. Yeah. You have the best sculptor right next to the best illustrator, next to the best concept artist, next to the best game artist. The thing is, there is always somebody better than you. Always. Just because if you are the best game artist, whatever that might be, you're best sculptor. There is somebody who's better at sculpting a specific part or a different style than you, or let's say you were to become the best, objectively best sculptor. Impossible to do, but let's, for sake of argument, say that. Then you have somebody who's better at character design than you.
Yeah.
There is always somebody who is better than you, and you just gotta accept that, and then stop comparing yourself to other people, because it's just not going to work. It's the whole thing we talked about in one of the other videos. Like you feel demotivated because you compare your behind the scenes footage with their highlight reel. Like you don't know how much time we went into getting those pieces that you're doing. But if you compare yourself to your former self, then you have a fairly objective way of doing it. Like Morten, I've kept all my stuff online. I have a blog which goes back to 2008, I think it is, and it's brutal. I mean, like the first stuff there is like, it's not great because it's like 10 years ago. Yeah. But it's fine, who cares? The cool thing is you can see progress. And then you can also see that at this point in this year, something changed. Yeah. Like you can see these leaps of improvement here.
Yeah, I had that with there was a Danish 3D form that is unfortunately not online anymore. So I've salvaged those pictures. Where I went back and I actually checked it out. And man, I was just a douche. Like there was this one, I was trying to do a self-portrait, in 3D. And easy. I didn't know anything about 3D at this point. I'd probably done it for maybe 3 months or something. And so I posted this picture of a, let's call it a head. I guess it had the silhouette of a head.
A potato.
A potato with a nose.
Resembling potato.
But the problem is I didn't know anything about topology. I didn't know anything about the flow of the face, how things were supposed to sit on the face. So I posted this on the forum, and one guy got back to me and was like, yeah, great start. Obviously, he thought it was shit. But he was like, maybe you want to look into, topology and like try to fix, like, get some topology flow around the eyes and the mouth. And my stupid 17-year-old self, or however it was like, yeah, I thought topology was pretty hard, so I'll do that next time. It's like, you idiot. But these are the kind of things where you look back and you think, man, that was pretty stupid. Yeah. Let me not do that.
Yeah, that's a good way of doing it as well. Not just looking back onto the actual art, but also just looking back at how you were as a person. In this case, that both are valid. Hopefully, you're a bit better than that now in both areas.
Hopefully,
a little bit. One thing I also want to talk about as well is, I think it's really valuable to not do easy things, but to do hard things. It's kind of like the whole thing. I think it's a JFK speech when he's talking about like we go to the moon not because it's easy but because it's hard, because you're conquering a thing here. Yeah. This is something that we listen to some of Jordan Peterson's rants. He's a very angry man sometimes, but he has some pretty important tidbits here of wisdom, I'd say. One of the things he's been talking about, which I totally agree with, is you really get satisfaction and deep joy in life from doing hard things. It's kind of like what everyone keeps saying about, if I win the lottery, I'm just going to go to the beach and drink a margarita. You're like, all right, cool. How many margaritas are you going to have? You're going to be sitting there for 12 hours a day. You're going to have 6 margaritas or 7 margaritas, and you're going to just be doing this forever. Yes. That's an easy thing to do. That is the easiest thing in the world. You can become fat, and you're just going to be drinking margaritas and be super drunk.
And tanned.
And super tanned and get skin cancer like nobody's business. Or you can do something which is actually tricky to do. Like maybe you want to learn a new skill.
Maybe you can go down to the beach. It's like, and you find somewhere in Mexico where you can manufacture your own tequila, set up your own tequila company, so you can drink. I don't know.
Like that would be hard, right?
Yeah, that's super hard.
You will find a lot of joy in that. Like I find a lot of joy in doing what we've been doing here. Like getting to the level we were in our career was really hard to do. It required a lot of work. Like doing character arts for movies, there aren't that many positions there, and that was really fun to do, and it gave me like a deeper sense of I wouldn't necessarily say purpose, but it just gave me like a deep joy knowing I'd achieved something really hard.
Yeah.
Flip normals has been incredibly hard because it's been such a marathon.
It's like it's kind of stupid. We give up our career to sit here and talk about stuff for free YouTube videos.
Yeah.
But it's kind of the thing where we've now switched out something. I'm not going to say that doing the effects and doing creatures isn't hard, but it became less hard.
Yes.
Because you get used to the workflow.
Became a habit.
Yeah, and you become used to how to work working with people in a company. We've switched that out now for being full-time with our own thing. Now it's suddenly really hard again.
Yeah, it is.
And I get an immense joy out of it. Like, I don't know, my motivation is just to keep this growing and get this out to as many people as I can. I can see that we're helping people. We're getting a lot of feedback from everyone now that they're really enjoying the content, and maybe people learn something. Someone recently got in touch with us about oh yeah, I wasn't going to apply for this internship thing, but now I applied and I got it thanks to you guys. So it's like, oh, that's super cool. So my motivation there is just to help people improve and learn.
And that's really hard. I mean, it's really hard to essentially motivate people to get an internship at a certain place. And that gives me a lot of joy.
Yeah.
And doing Chinese is incredibly tricky. If you know any good resource for learning Chinese, please let me know. I can't find any. It's so tricky. But the moment you like listen to a song or you listen to a podcast or something like that, and you just catch a sentence and you're like, oh, I get this now.
Yeah.
That level of satisfaction is insanely rewarding.
Yeah.
It's so good. But that's because I'm doing something hard. If I was just drinking margaritas all day, I'd be like, cool, another margarita. Oh, awesome. So it's the same thing as well when you're doing fitness as well, which is hard. I mean, we've both been doing fitness for like the last many years, just staying in shape. But the moment you can see real improvement, maybe you haven't like taken like a super douchey selfie in a while and you haven't like seen progress. But then the moment you do actually see progress, I become so hyped in a whole different level. And the reason I think is because it's hard, not a lot of people can do it.
Yeah.
Because if it was, by definition, it's hard. So it just kind of means that you can now do something that not a lot of people can do.
Yeah.
Apart from the entire country of China.
Yeah, but I mean, like, the reason I can talk about sort of Japanese and motivation is because it's still a fairly fresh thing.
Yeah.
Compared to 3D, which I've been doing for so long that it's kind of hard to think back to when did it start and stuff.
I've been doing 3D for longer than I haven't now, pretty much.
Oh, that's
weird. Insane.
But like with Japanese, it's when I was around, when I started the second time, when I was around 20, I started because I got like an internship job thing in Japan, and this was during school, and I was going to go down there for the summer and just work for a little bit. So I thought, it'd be super cool if I could speak the language. This was like, I don't know, with 6 or 7 months of prep or something. And it's kind of back to the drawing guy. Can I learn a language? No, you cannot.
No.
It's too little time. And I didn't really... My motivation wasn't really all there, I think. It was just more of this would be kind of cool. Yeah, so let me try. So obviously I failed horribly. It was hard to keep myself motivated while like reading textbooks and doing kanji. It was like, why do I need this? If I can just speak, I don't need to read.
Yeah.
Whereas with this time, obviously now I have more time because we quit our jobs, but also after working there and being there, I just found out that I really enjoy the country. I really enjoy being there. I just enjoy exploring the country. It's such a huge country with crazy nature, crazy culture, and there's so many fun things to do. So that really motivated me to pick it up again and really go ham on studying the language. So I think finding that one thing that can motivate you, and obviously that thing can change. Like that changes all the time for us with 3D. Then you go like, now I just want to be the best person at sculpting a face.
Yeah.
And then you go like, okay, I think I'm decent now.
Yeah.
And then you develop a new kind of motivation where, maybe I can apply this to the entire body.
Yeah.
Maybe I want to learn texturing now so I can become a better artist in general. So it's like, it's trying to shift those goals to sort of keep ahead of them all the time, I think.
Yeah, I think so. This is something which we had a point which is kind of related to this. It's like make a list of your weaknesses. This is something I did during art school as well. Just what is my biggest weakness?
Can also be a mental list.
Can also be a mental list. Yeah, you don't have to actually write it down, but like just figure out what is your weakness, and if you keep always improving your weakness, I mean, you're just gonna generally become hopefully a fairly adequate person.
A fairly adequate person that's okay, decent in most ways.
Yes. And then, of course, it's kind of like the debate between should you make the strongest stuff stronger or should you make the weakest stuff stronger? I heard a podcast where we were talking about like football versus or soccer, if you're from across the pond and you're silly. And like football versus basketball here. And in basketball, it was about making the strongest player stronger. But in football, it was about making the weakest player stronger. Just because then there were so many goals in basketball where you just got to get those through. Yeah. But in football, it's like it can be 1-0.
Yeah.
And you just got to make sure that if you have one weak link here, then the other one might get a goal in. So it's kind of like, do you want to become an expert sculptor and only become good at sculpting? That is taking your strongest thing and making that stronger.
Yeah.
Or do you want to take your weakest thing and make that stronger? That could be like, oh, maybe your effects work is really bad, or your lighting and whatnot. And just that also just depends on what you want to become. If you want to become the most hotshot sculptor out there, maybe you want to only make the strongest stuff stronger. But if you want to become more generalist or have an overall sense of get a good art foundation, maybe you want to take the weakest things. That's kind of what I was doing. I improved the base things so I could do most things, but then I took my sculpting and made that stronger and stronger and stronger. But then let's say you do want to only become a sculptor, only a hotshot sculptor. You still got to do the whole what is my weakness here, and that's like, well, I'm not very good at sculpting ears. Sculpt ears. Just do a bunch of them, sculpting noses, all these kind of things here, and then you can expand from there. And you just generally just refine your skill set to a point where you'll become awesome, more than adequate.
I think that's a good point also to staying motivated throughout your career. Is that when you just back to sculpting, like with Henning was talking about the ears, like you wanted to do hard things, not easy things. If you get to a point where you're comfortable, like you're truly comfortable and you feel good about what you do. You know, you actually feel like this is some good stuff. I'm producing good quality work. You can get work. You're hired. All that stuff. Then I think it's time to introspect, look in and figure out what are the areas that you're maybe not so good at, and then go back and reevaluate that and do that. That's going to be uncomfortable again, and then so you'll be in this cycle of I'm not very good at ears or feet or eyes or whatever. Then you get that up to a certain level, and now you're good at 2 things.
Yeah,
and so you can keep improving this all the time.
I think what we're kind of hinting at here is the T-shirt which says "Get out of your comfort zone."
Yeah,
and that is important.
Yeah,
by doing this, it will just feel uncomfortable.
Yeah,
and that is kind of the comfort zone. I just don't want to say get out of your comfort zone and leave it at that, because that's like, all right, cool. Now I'm out of my comfort zone. Like, what does that even mean?
You know what someone should do? They should transcribe this entire thing, then put it on the longest picture in the world, and then post it on Facebook.
If you do that, that would be awesome.
That would be pretty awesome. I wonder if you could do like a, because like YouTube has those automatic captions.
Yeah.
If there's a way to export out the captions, paste them into a picture. So if someone from the Discord is listening, this is now a job for you.
Yeah.
That would be funny.
That would be funny. Going back to being uncomfortable. It's fine. We can have a little diversions here. It really is about not about slogans. It's about the true meaning of it. Like what I was saying here. If you are really good at sculpting a face and then you could do sculpt an ear, it's gonna be uncomfortable. And that is what going out of comfort zone means. It means that you're doing something, and it just you kind of feel bad about it. You feel insecure.
Yeah.
And one of the things I think is so important here, this is something which has helped me so much, is becoming comfortable with the notion of being uncomfortable here.
Yeah.
It kind of sounds like an oxymoron here, but essentially this means that you're accepting that there's going to be a period here where you are not comfortable, of discomfort. I really learned this when I was a few years ago. I was starting Krav Maga in London, and this is crazy martial art, stupid stuff. And the first lesson there, I'd never done martial art before, and I was just thinking that this is terrible. I'm getting beaten up left, right, and center, and it feels really uncomfortable because I didn't know how to punch or strike or block or do any of those things. I literally had no idea what I was doing, and everyone else did. Everyone else there was better than me, and I just realized that this is just gonna suck for quite some time. And it took a few months, but then after a few months, you get the basics in there. You can kind of start playing around with it. You can jump and block and all these kind of things here.
Yeah.
And that was just from doing something unrelated to CG. This has improved my CG a lot, because whenever I'm doing, let's say I'm sculpting an ear or a foot or whatnot, something which is kind of hard, and it does feel uncomfortable. I'm not like, all right, screw it, let's just pack it up here, boys, and let's just leave it. It's more about, all right, this feels pretty bad.
Yeah.
Let's just keep doing it.
I mean, that's what I have with Japanese as well. It's the thing that got me sort of into Japanese, I guess, a lot again. I've been back in Japanese for about 2 or 3 months now. And about a month ago, my approach to Japanese changed. I was doing the standard stuff of textbook, which I hate. Like it's actually, I hate it with a passion, because I think learning language that way just sucks. Like it's not fun. Like I'm not having fun doing it. And when you're not having fun doing something, it can be really hard to motivate yourself. I guess I've gotten to the point now where it's just like, well, I just suck it up.
Just watch anime like a week.
But then I found a channel here on YouTube called Matt versus Japan, and Matt was talking about, you know, things of keeping. He was talking about keeping yourself motivated. I would really, anyone who's interested in motivation, I would actually consider going to Matt versus Japan's channel, checking it out, regardless of you're interested in Japanese or not, because he talks about a lot of really good things. And one of the things we talked about was he was talking about grinding, which it just clicked with me instantly, where if we change out the fact that we're learning a language, or you're learning a software or a skill, any skill, and you go think of it like a video game. Like I think most people here can relate to playing video games, whether it's World of Warcraft or Pokemon. In this example, we're going Pokemon. So this is me. I'm stupid when I play Pokemon. I get, you know, a couple Pokemon, then I go into the grass and I just decimate Pidgeys for a couple of hours. That's grinding.
Get the buffest Rattata in the world.
Exactly. And then your little Rattata can just destroy Onyx. But that's the whole, that sort of, I think, shifted my mindset a lot on it, where it's, when I'm doing Japanese now, I just view it as grinding. Like, it's not that I enjoy, per se, learning. I'm learning, what is it, like 3,000 kanji?
Yeah.
And it's not that I massively enjoy
pressure.
it. You know, some parts of it I find is really fun. You know, learning, maybe I look up the etymology of a word, I figure out why is this kanji like this. But it's the grind.
Yeah.
I just know that if I do this, I will level up.
Yeah.
Then, you know, in October, I'm going to Japan for a week with my girlfriend. So it's like, okay, that's kind of like me going to the gym.
Yeah.
Like the Pokemon gym. And I'm challenging a gym leader. And, you know, on Wednesdays, I have a tutor that I try to speak Japanese with. I see that as like a mini challenge as well. So it's like,
that is like a trainer along
yeah, that's
the way.
a trainer. I meet a trainer along the way. It's uncomfortable. I don't really want to have the battle. But now I've been walking in the Pidgey grass for a few hours, and hopefully it's a little bit better.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like having that mindset on things really changed a lot for me. That made it a lot more enjoyable. At the same time, I also switched out. If you do go to Matt, I'm not going to go into detail here, but if you do go to Matt versus Japan's channel, you'll see sort of like the method that I'm using.
I think that's so important, the whole grinding thing there, because that's applicable to everything. One of the things we want to get across with this video here is that this is not just for CG or whatnot. Like when I'm starting learning Chinese or programming or whatever it might be, or starting a secret company, or all these kind of things, there is a method to it here. It's not just going through it and just trying out random things here. There is a clear method to it now. Like when I'm going to be starting Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu now in a few hours. First session, yay! So whenever you guys listen to this, I'll probably be beaten to a pulp.
Yeah, next episode it'll probably just be me.
Yeah, exactly. But then, you know, there's gonna be an approach to it, like specifically what you're gonna be doing. I don't know, but it's more about you got to be grinding, got to be doing a lot.
Yeah,
I'm gonna be beaten to a pulp. It's gonna be really uncomfortable, and so what? So what if it's uncomfortable? Every single person there is gonna be better than me in a few hours.
Yeah,
and I know that. And it's okay. I'm not nervous about it or anything, because that's just what's gonna happen. Because we have an approach to this. Turns out, start learning CG, you can learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with the same approach here. Yeah. Like there is actually an underlying thing here to it, through discipline and through having a clear goal of why you're doing it. So I think we're kind of reaching the end of this now.
Yeah.
Do you have any crazy stuff you want to talk about? Any?
I think we've covered a lot of things, and I mean, I hope this is I hope this can help people.
So then this has been exactly an hour right now.
Yes. Okay, there we go. Now we can close.
Yeah. Phew. So just to sum it up, though, for me, when it comes to discipline or to motivation and discipline, all this, it's really about discipline. It's really about consistent work. It doesn't have to be. It's not a sprint. It's not where you just running for like crazy to learn whatever it is you're running it or doing. It's not about sculpting from ZBrush for 15 hours a day. It's about discipline and a slow but consistent effort here, where you have, hopefully you have a resemblance of life outside.
Yeah.
Where you get enough sleep. You always get enough sleep. You never stop that, because then everything goes off the rails. And you just keep being consistent with it. And then get long-term goals as well. Like Morten was saying, learning Japanese is one of the reasons is going to Japan, maybe living in Japan, a clear underlying thing here. And then I'm also combining this with like bursts of energy as well. Like inspiration is important. But one of the key problems I keep seeing is that people rely on bursts of inspiration.
Yeah.
Bursts of inspiration is...
I'll go to ArtStation. Oh, I'll watch the show. Okay, now I'm motivated again.
Exactly. You're relying on just like this very fickle inspiration to be able to do a really hard task here. Most things you're doing is like 1,000-step journey. Like you just gotta take. That actually doesn't sound like a very hard journey at all. It's actually a million-step journey.
10,000 steps for 10,000 hours.
Yes,
with your lists,
with your T-shirt slogans.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, most things just takes a lot of time to do. They are incredibly time-consuming, and you just gotta accept that it's going to take a long time. You're going to accept that it's going to be really hard, and you're also going to accept that once you do it, it's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Once you can like play around with ZBrush or your Japanese or whatever it might be, it's going to be fantastic. So break big project into smaller chunks. Have clear milestones along the way as well.
I think milestones are super important. It's actually something I think
Let's talk about that real quick.
Didn't really touch upon, but milestones is like it's a mini goal for me. Yeah. I guess that it's a goal post, and it's like I want to work towards this thing. Once I reach this thing, then I can start the next milestone that I have. So I think planning out those milestones can be really important to keep ahead, so you don't reach. That's where you don't reach one of your goals and think, shit, what do I do now?
Yeah.
You know, it's...
Or you never reach your goal.
Yeah,
because it's too hard.
Yeah, so it's like breaking that... It's like breaking your motivation into smaller projects as well can also really help you stay motivated.
Yeah, exactly. It's like if I were to go to the gym across here now, to the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and try to fight the biggest and baddest dude there, I would get... I would die. He would literally kill me in around 4 seconds. Like, that's not a good way of doing it. Or if you're trying to lift weights, you're trying to lift 200 kilos first time, you can't do it. That might be your end goal, to be the best at something. But you got to have milestones along the way as well. Yeah. If your goal is to become an artist at Blizzard, you can't just be, all right, start now, open Maya, open ZBrush, go. Yeah. You got to have something like, oh, maybe you did a really cool piece. You get maybe one of the goals is you get featured on ArtStation. You get a 3D Total Excellence Award. Your mom put your sculpt in the fridge. Yeah. You get 100 likes on Facebook. Whatever silly things it might be. Just have clear milestones, because otherwise you are just going to be grinding indefinitely.
Yeah, and I think the whole thing about being comfortable with being uncomfortable, and do the hard things. Do the things you suck at, and make sure to improve those along the way, so that you don't like forget what it is to stay motivated.
And remember to take breaks, guys.
Yeah,
play some Pokemon.
Play some Pokemon.
Actually, take breaks. Go to nature. We usually have like one walk a day, just trying to go in a little bit into a forest, or like just getting some slight nature or something.
And we were doing that even when we were working in a studio. I think it's important. You know, we'd go for a 20-minute walk or something. Just go outside. And not look at your screen all day. Yeah. Like, don't look at nature on your screen.
No,
for example.
No. So like when everyone else took smoke breaks, we took walk breaks.
Yeah, exactly.
It was a little bit weird because I feel some people were like, "Oh, you're taking breaks." No, everyone else they're down in a cafe drinking coffee all the time.
Yeah.
We took a walk.
We just went outside the building.
Yeah. Can you walk outside the building? Turns out you can. What are you gonna do?
So I really hope this video hasn't turned into the thing I hate the most in the world, which is like pseudo motivational stuff. But I feel like we've tried to get our points across, and I hope, I hope it's not pseudo motivational bullshit.
I mean, it works for us at least.
Yeah.
So it's we've been really trying this. We've been really trying here to do the best job we can.
Yeah.
I'd be very curious to hear if there's anything here in this video which has been particularly useful to you guys.
Yeah, if you are find that you can stay motivated other ways, you know, something we can add to this.
We'd love to hear that, because like Morgan was saying, there are things like suddenly like the Pidgey grinding metaphor, which is just like ding. There might be in maybe this entire video there is one thing which is useful.
Yeah,
that's often what I have when I'm going through like all my business books and stuff. There is one useful thing. Throw out the entire thing.
TLDR, watch this entire video.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you so much for your attention for an hour.
Oh yeah, I think that's the longest video we've ever done.
Yeah, probably. Now go out in the sunlight.
Yeah, we're gonna go outside now, and we're gonna die out there.
Yeah.
Oh god, it's gonna be so warm.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and if you want to see more content like this in the future, we're gonna keep it maybe not this long in the future, but make sure to like, comment, and subscribe.
No, thanks guys.
Very exciting.
Ooh, there we are.
To One Fantastic Week, a weekly web show about self-employed fantasy artists where we talk about current business, creativity, and the all-important question, how's your week? I'm Sam Flegel.
And I'm Pete Moorbacher. You can find more about One Fantastic Week at onefantasticweek.com. You can support the show by going to patreon.com/1FW, and you can chip in like $1 an episode because you like watching the show every week. And then you can join the conversation over on Facebook. Just look up for One Fantastic Week on Facebook. We've got an awesomely moderated community space there where you can ask questions, learn stuff, meet people, the whole 9 yards. We've got Omar and Sheila Rayan, who you may know from all of their many convention appearances, and also you've probably seen Omar's stuff around and all sorts of books and magic cards and what. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Thank you.
All right. So how's y'all's week been? What you been up to?
It was great.
I'm not getting great vibes. What have you really been up to?
Yeah, that was an unconvincing great.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to sugarcoat it. It's not like you're gonna get fired or anything.
Yeah, just working. Yesterday was our 24th wedding anniversary.
Oh wow! Congrats!
So, yeah, it was quite a milestone there. But we went out for dinner. Nothing very fancy.
Right. So when you say working, what does working mean for you?
For me, I'm doing ceramics. So going to the pottery studio and playing with mud, and then painting stuff, and I don't know, that kind of stuff.
That's good. I mean, I don't think have we ever had a what is the proper term? Ceramicist? That feels like the right word. Ceramicist.
I guess. Yeah, I don't know. I've heard ceramist. I've heard. I don't know what the proper term is. I play with mud. I
think you're our first ceramics person to be on. So
cool.
Not something that we deal with a lot. So do you have like a separate ceramic studio space that you go to? Like, how's your setup work for all that?
I actually go to our local art center and I use their pottery studio, because you pay like a certain amount an hour to use the space, and they have all the tools and equipment, and they have the kilns and all that. So it works out really good. So I don't have to have that huge mess of stuff at home and have to worry about burning my house down with this, kiln firing and stuff like that.
Yeah, my only frame of reference is back in college going into the ceramic studio, which I never actually took ceramics. I think took sculpture instead. But it was just like mud on the floor, on the walls. Just like... It's
very messy, or it can be very messy. We our studio, we tend to keep it nice and clean because it's a lot of people in and out, so it can very quickly get messy. But yeah.
Wait, who's coming in and out of your studio?
Huh?
Who's coming in and out of your studio?
Ceramic studio.
Oh, the ceramic studio. Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, you got people coming through your home studio?
And all her ceramic stuff is actually in our living room.
Yeah, we don't have a kitchen table because that's where I store all my stuff that I'm working on at home. I
Mhm.
do all the muddy work at the studio, and then I bring the bisque pieces home and I paint them and glaze them, and then I bring them back to fire them at the studio. So I do the fun stuff at home and the messy stuff at the studio.
And so, do you primarily ship your stuff? I know you sell at conventions. Are you doing
Yeah.
both those things?
I have an Etsy shop, so I sell it there, my stuff off of that.
And,
And
and should someone listening right now want to go to that Etsy shop, where would they go?
Sheila Ryan, what is it? How does it work? SheilaRyan.etsy.com, I think is how it works.
I'm there right now. Etsy.com/shop/Sheila Ryan.
Yep, that's me.
Awesome. And so I'm sure, like, how does the shipping side of ceramics works? Because that's got to be something you had to figure out.
Yeah, we have many different size boxes in our basement for all the different things I have to ship. Yeah, packing is an interesting thing.
All right, so I mean, our viewers love the nitty gritty. So, like, are we talking bubble wrap? You cramming paper in there? Like, what?
Yeah, there's lots of bubble wrap involved. Paper as well, and then just all sorts of different sizes of boxes, because I make little bitty things, I make bigger stuff, I make, plates and bowls and cups. My big thing is mugs. That's my main, like, cash cow, as it were.
Yes, and we actually have had a few people in.
Omar is modeling it there for anybody who can see the video here.
And in the chat, a few folks have posted that they love your mugs and have one with them right now. So there you go.
Yeah, and I can absolutely relate to the packing material thing. That is my basement too, and it has been my life for the last few years while I've been independent. And you know what I've learned about packing, I feel is important to impart on the world at large. It's not about padding, it's about immobilizing the piece.
Exactly.
Because it's like the point where it breaks is not because somebody's foot actually passes through the cardboard box and hits the thing. It's when it shakes around, it actually hits itself against the inside of the box. So even if you have it padded a lot, if it can move around at all, it's going to break more likely than if you have it so that it's going to be like locked in place away from the edges. Right. So you got to make sure to, like, that's what I like. I actually like a crinkle paper or the craft paper more than the bubble wrap for that, because I feel like it holds it tighter. The bubble wrap is too bouncy. You'd think you'd want that, but you don't.
Well, I do like a combination of the two.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I wrap everything in bubble wrap, and then I put the paper around it to kind of keep it in the box, centered in the box. And yeah, there's an art to the whole keeping stuff safe.
And everything's
shipping.
gotten.
Yeah, so far, yeah, knock on wood. Like,
Either that or your customers love you so much they wouldn't dare send you an email letting you know the bad news.
Yeah.
There is value in that as well.
I get a lot of pictures, like, people like have their beloved mug and they broke it when they were washing it or something, and they'll email me in tears, and I'll make them a new one just like their old one. And so
cool.
It happens.
So we're getting a comment in the chat that we're not getting video for you guys. Pete, is that a setting?
I think I clicked on myself by accident. I meant to click on them, and I think I clicked on myself. So it was just.
All right.
I'm seeing them. I'm seeing them just fine. It may just come in on the archive. I'm sorry if you can't see it. You might want to refresh the feed. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I also see you guys just fine.
Google Hangouts is a mysterious animal, as we all discovered this morning.
All right. So, Omar, what about you? What's your week been like?
Painting.
That's a normal week?
Yeah, it's a normal week. Get up, try and take as long as possible with breakfast, and then paint. And
I've always got the sense that when it comes to you selling this stuff, that Sheila's doing, helping out a lot.
Now, where'd you get that idea?
Well, she's talking about her cardboard box collection, and you're talking about painting. I think there's a hint right there.
Yeah. It's, I'm very lucky in that sense that she handles a good chunk of that side of the business.
And do you also have a store online that one could go visit?
Apparently. I hear rumors of such a thing. Couple of places, and she handles all of that stuff. I paint paintings, or try and figure out how to paint paintings. And that's what mostly this week has been, is working on a particular piece for the Haven Gallery. and a show that's coming up, and when it's a
Could you see that?
complicated sort of oil, and you usually start putting blinders on at a certain point, trying to figure out how to paint.
What do you mean by that?
Well, it's get an idea in your head and you pursue it, and more often than not, at least for me, I feel I kind of reach beyond my technical abilities, and you try and figure out how to express that. So I've been doing this for 30 years now, and I still haven't figured out how to go ahead and make the medium really do what I want it to do. And so every new idea is usually, I'm finding more and more, I'm actually embracing the challenges of what I can do with paint, as opposed to concepts of what I can come up with for the subject matter of the painting itself.
It's interesting. Do you feel the same with your watercolor work, or is that more?
It's all the same.
Yeah.
It's all the same. The medium itself isn't really, the particulars of it is the watercolor. And the deeper you get into it, the more you realize you don't know, or the more you realize the possibilities of how you could push that medium, and that just opens up all the frustrations of I can just about feel it and see where I can make this do something, and it's turning flat and it's gone, and now I have to scrape it all off or scrub it out and try again, and it's a lot of push and pull and fight. And luckily, I don't have to worry about what boxes and packing and all of that.
So how many, on
paint.
average, how many hours a day are you spending just painting?
Not that many anymore. I'm trying very hard this year not to spend too many hours. And past it's been, and that's one of those things I'm debating right now, is whether to go ahead, and I've been trying to go back to the dojo and do martial arts and this and that. And we went scuba diving this weekend, went to dinner and saw Deadpool and all those things, which last year we didn't do at all.
Yeah, we didn't have any
and
social
it becomes, really kind of wake up, paint, try and take as much time out when you eat and drink, and it's back to paint until it's time to go to bed. And so it's and that was just too much last year. So this year's trying to be a little bit more 9 to 5 on it.
That's good.
That's been a really familiar story from a lot of people I've talked to this year.
Now I'm up against a deadline because this is an oil that needs to be shipped out. So it means it has to get done in a particular amount of time to allow it to be dry enough to ship to the gallery. And so the constant, struggle with the lifestyle you want to do, and then the painting itself demanding attention, that everything else starts getting pushed to the side, and you begin to kind of drop those other obligations and hobbies. And maybe I'm not going to go outside the door today because I need to get this thing done. And you think, okay, if I stay up at 2 o'clock in the morning, I'll get it done. And then next morning you look at it and go, nope, it's still going to need another 3 or 4 days. And you're back into that cycle of being trapped in the painting prison.
The painting prison.
It's a love-hate sort of thing. You get kind of, you want to go ahead and make those things and work, and it does take a lot. So at least for me, I don't have a very systematic method of how to build a painting. I slap something and start pushing things around and probably shoot myself in the foot more often than not in the process. That does make it a more of a journey than a just manufacturing.
Well, there's a lot of young artists I know that are trying to treat the process in a more manufactured way, and they get a lot of advice on how to. Well, it is how you're supposed to do it.
The proper academic method of building a painting, particularly oil, and there was a reason for that. Did you go ABC, so you know what you're doing and where you're going, and you play your layers, but it becomes paint by number, and I usually find that kind of kills the heart of the idea. For me, I get bored with it, and it doesn't allow for innovation as you move through it. For me,
well, I mean, I think for my experience of your work is that I'm always seeing innovation in the way that you're making the work technically, and you're always trying to find new interesting concepts that are being expressed in a really exciting and lively way. So the fact that it sounds like you're pursuing that so strongly. I mean, those two facts seem to line up pretty neatly for me.
The only way I can
you're
go ahead and keep interest in it, and one of my biggest problems is, you know, you have to spend time to do this stuff, and if you're not challenging yourself while you're doing it, then what's the point? It just become a humdrum. I don't know.
Well, but I mean, you were saying how you were trying to find a better work-life balance, and I think the struggle in finding that is also part of the whole reason why it's rewarding as well. Because I mean, I've also been dealing with a lot of work-life balance stuff and finding myself going too hard in one way and then getting stuck and going, you know, and then having to hit deadlines again and getting a lot of questions about where's your book, and I'm like, no, that book's 2 years late, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's the pros and cons of this kind of lifestyle, because you're not doing, you know, 9 to 5 ABC and you're just stuck in a constant mediocre routine. It's highs and lows, and you can go ahead and take 5 days off because nothing's happening and go somewhere without having to check with the boss. But the other side of it is that when you really have projects stewing, that you want to go and drop everything else too and just dedicate to that. So it's a lifestyle of contrast, and I don't know if I can go ahead and make it. I know some professional artists are able to go ahead and literally do the punch card and just do their 40 hours a week and have a weekend and all that, and I don't
know how they do that.
I don't know how you can do that.
I don't know a lot of people like that. Everybody, I know a lot of artists, and they're all their own weird. I have described it as like the Hellraiser puzzle box. That like at birth, every artist is gifted this like nightmare box, and it's got its own. Each one has its own like exclusive solution to it, and so it's this lifetime of trying to constantly like push and pull at this thing and reconfigure it to figure out, you know.
And as you grow as an artist, or hopefully grow as an artist, that configuration is constantly changing. So when you think you figured it out,
yep,
then you're starting to pursue something else, or you start, you know, even more frighteningly begin to kind of lose the direction of what you're trying to pursue. You know, it's like 1/2 of your career you're successful doing X, and then either you get bored with that or the market drops out. Now you have to go ahead and chase a new animal and rebuild something different, and that demand that it goes ahead and puts on the rest of your life.
I mean, getting to talk to a lot of artists that have been in this longer than me, I've seen that over and over again, and I've tried to stay aware of it myself, because it's like, I know that it's like, even if the market doesn't change, and the market's always changing, and I see people get left behind or new people get brought into it because of those market changes, even without that, at some point everybody changes, and you're what you want out of this whole thing, it'll shift underneath you, and then that's almost harder, because you have to go back to the point where you're asking yourself the really tough questions about like what's the point, like why are you doing it in the first place, and like
conundrums.
And then
any half decent artist has a midlife crisis every 5 years,
right, basically. And I've tried to embrace that quality of it, like just sort of expect that everything is potentially falling apart tomorrow. It's not great for the mental health. I mean, the amount of anxiety in that mindset is, I think, a little bit unbearable. But I mean, it feels like the truth. It feels like, you know, anybody, if you stay at this long enough, you know, whether it's going to be a month or it's going to be 10 years, eventually, you know, something changes and you have to change with it.
Yeah, and there's always that question of whether you have the chops to do that, or to go ahead and use what God-given talent you have, the limitations you have, to be able to meet those new challenges within yourself. And,
or see if your wife can do all your shipping for you.
Yeah, and those little bits and pieces where it's, because that not only the shipping, but the a whole social media and the whole computer machine monster. Because not, you know, that has become a larger part of being successful, or trying to be at least semi-successful at this kind of profession, is you do need to have some kind of access to that.
Yeah,
And
see, I'm
satisfying people with ship, being able to not only communicate this work out there, but to be able to ship it promptly and successfully too.
And do customer service so good that when people break stuff, they contact you to go buy another one.
I'm curious, how do you balance that, Sheila? Because you're also creating your own work, but then you've taken the responsibility.
Sleep? Wait, what sleep? I've heard rumors of, no. Yeah, it is kind of frustrating at times because I'm wearing so many hats. I'm running the business, I'm doing all the shipping for the online stores, and I'm trying to create my own work. And yeah, I get a little burned out. And it's part of one of the reasons why we're not doing Gen Con this year.
What? You're not going to be at Gen Con? It's crazy.
I needed a break.
Yeah, that's that part of this. That last year we got both kind of burned out a bit. And this year we're trying to slow it down and see if we could survive. And that's one of those parts of finding the balance, is how much doing convention trips, how much do those actually add to the visibility and the sales, and how much you can kind of back away from that, or back, because to do it all is it does put a lot of stress on things.
It takes more than 2 people to do all of it, in my experience. Like,
yeah, oh yeah, that's right. You got minions and all that.
I started trying to solve the problem by getting minions. I mean, you two sound like you need an intern.
But wrangling minions sounds like just another responsibility.
Yup.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
I've had so many conversations with Pete where
I've seen the Despicable movies, and those minions are, I mean, they're cute, but they're
they're a feisty bunch for sure. Yeah.
You have another person walk up to you with complete sincerity and just look at you like, okay, I'm ready to work. What do I do? And like suddenly, like getting into people managing, as a side of like, because that's the path that almost every successful career has, whether it's art or any business, right? It's like you're good at a thing, you sell that thing, you learn to sell that thing so well that you hire other people to sell that thing, and then suddenly you're managing people rather than doing the thing you started out to do.
Right. Yeah.
But it also comes to the question of how big to grow.
Right.
How big and how fast to grow, because it's, I mean, we're successfully living on the size that we're at, and maybe technically we could go ahead and be a company with 6 employees under us and more visibility, et cetera, but is that really a lifestyle and even a financial reward in that? Because the more you have of that, the more expensive it is to run that kind of business.
Yep.
And so as part of that balance, and like, cutting back on convention trips, for example, it's just this year. We're going to probably go back next year, who knows? But that, to be a comfortable size and a comfortable shape of an operation that you can actually live and survive in.
Yeah, and that's what I mean about it. It's like
sometimes too much success too fast is more of a curse than
it's such a personal thing. I mean, it's like the size of the business and like what sorts of operations you want to do is absolutely a personal choice, and it's likely to be a different solution for everybody.
Yeah, personalities, because it's like, even just, she won't let me go ahead and put stuff in a box. With the packing and stuff. I mean, it sounds like, it's like I'm making her do all that other nasty work.
I'm making.
But it's like, I get to go ahead and drive them to the post office.
Yeah.
And I have occasionally packed my own painting. She would allow me to, but she'll supervise it. It's like a certain control. Got to get it done right. I mean, that comes to quality of service that she is offering. She would not trust other people to go ahead and handle a lot of this stuff, and that kind of level of attention to like how I want to try and make things get done.
So I'm curious. You mentioned Gen Con last year. Are there any other shows you cut out this year that you did last year?
I think that's it.
Yeah, because it's like Spectrum. Although Spectrum is trying to get back up again. Yeah,
I saw that they're connecting with.
Yeah, because we haven't really been doing that very many shows in general. I mean, there was a few shows in the past where it was like Dragon Con, and there was a Fairy Con, and it's like things I got invited to along with our regular
Oh yeah, and the Pratchett one.
Yeah,
we did
oh
that.
yeah, and the Pratchett one in New Orleans, and
Well, that sounds fun.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was cool. Except we both caught the flu down there, so all I had was
No Cajun flu, huh?
yeah,
That's a spicy flu, right?
gumbo and bourbon, and trying to like get this flu off. So I didn't get that much of a convention thing, but it was still fun.
They call it the swamp fever.
Yep, that's it. It was a swamp fever.
Yeah.
That's always, but that's the thing. It's like the traveling and trying to
Yeah.
get ready for shows and working for those, and yeah, it kind of.
It's the prep that always gets me. It's like I feel like the prep actually takes more days than the
show itself is fine, but it's like something like Gen Con, and we go ahead and drive out to a lot of these because we don't like to ship. Another
Especially with ceramics, like you have to drive.
Yeah, ceramics. Yeah, with things as fragile as ceramics, and in the occasional ones we have to bring our own booth, and so you're 2 days on the road, so it takes a whole week, and then there's like getting the print shops and all of that ready and building inventory, so you're talking a couple of months to go ahead and it's usually a month and a half minimum getting ready for a show to go ahead and do it right.
Yeah, sometimes I wonder where all my time goes, and then I have one of these conversations and I go like, oh yeah, that's all that.
Just like going to X for like a weekend just to show you stuff. It's like, no,
there's a
lot of pre-prep.
And then there's the afterwards. You think you get home and go back to normal, but there's always the residual follow-up stuff. You get, maybe you took some pre-orders while you were there. You got to get those shipped out. Pre-orders. And then just the general unpacking.
I hate taking those special orders at the show because it's just like, it's not like a website order where everything is like you have the name and address and the receipt and everything. It's like it takes 5 times as long as to fulfill one of those orders. And then you need to like keep it in the back of your head or keep notes or put like on a sheet or something. And then it's just
we actually now doing it's like we do a little receipt thing and write it all up and get money and the whole thing, so it's all and that took us a few years to figure that out. Go ahead and actually make a system,
jotting it randomly in a notebook and trying to remember it
or on the back of a business card, and it's like, what was that?
I had a lot of orders on the backs of business cards, and like I ended up switching over to I set up like a task management app that like syncs between my phone and the web, and like having people punch in all their info on that. And then I found that like my assistant was putting it on a different board inside the app, and so half the orders got filled. And I was like, and there's always something, and that's why like sometimes I just want to say no and just like leave the money. Like, no, it's cool. Sorry, no. Can you ship this to me? They're like, no, sorry, I have no ability to do that. I have no idea how to do that.
But that's the whole point of the conventions, though.
I know, you're there for 3 days, 4 days. You got to make the money.
Yeah, and it's not just about the making of the 3 days, but to build up that network, build up that.
Yeah, I like
what's beautiful that there's the follow up. That is like a couple of months later, you're still getting things from that thing, and that's where the interesting experiment this year. Not because we've done Gen Con for at least a decade or something,
I think, and
it's always been very good to us. So I'll be kind of curious to see what the fallout is of not doing that.
The fallout's going to be that next year, if you come back, you're going to sell great next year because people are going to be like, "Oh my God, you're back! I missed you so much last year."
Yeah, so I'm planning
to buy something now in case you.
I'm going to have rumors of my death this winter. It's going to be a grisly death. They're not going to find the body. Prices are going to go up.
It's funny.
Just to go ahead and create that.
We had Donato on a couple of months ago, and he talked about the reasons to do conventions, and one of his reasons was just so funny but true is he just wants to show up to remind people he's still alive.
Oh, that's 100%. That's 100%, and that's where it's like the where Sheila's doing so fantastic with the social media thing, and that's that side of it. It's like even if you don't, nothing incredible is happening in your career, it's just to constantly put yourself out there so people know you're there. I think that's like 80% of the game.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there's a lot of us tend to be a bit on the introvert side and don't want to go ahead and be dancing on the front stage. But that's
well, there's something I got to ask you about.
You're constantly saying, "Look, Kate, look at me, look what I'm doing."
I've seen your work get passed around on a few places. People keep assuming that your work is very, very old, like classical paintings, and it shows up on Reddit and in memes and stuff as like classical paintings.
Yeah.
Has that been an overall positive experience because because people have just seen the work and it's raised awareness for it? Or is it just constantly frustrating and annoying?
I find that really, I mean, that's what it's all about as far as I'm concerned, you know. And if the work ends up kind of being tagged timeless in that sense, and being stolen or used or manipulated, whatever, it just is getting into the stream. And of course, she gets really frustrated on a part of the thing, because
I'm really happy to hear that you feel that way
and all of that, and it's like, does it have a name tagged onto it, and etc. But
people in the comments always go crazy, and like I popped in on the comment section on one of those Reddit threads for Tripping Through Time, and because like I saw it like hit the front page, one of your pieces hit the front page of Reddit, and it was like uncredited, part of a meme, and there was a lot of people in the comments who were in there correcting on your behalf.
I'm very humbled by that I have enough people out there that are policing for me, which is
because I don't follow Reddit. I don't go down, like, I don't know all that stuff. So we always get, whenever something goes viral, it happens like a couple times a year. He's got this one painting that just won't go away. Someone always messages us and said, "Hey, did you know this is going on?" And then I'll go to the thing and I'll see so many people saying, it's like, "Hey, this is Omar's stuff, and here's a link to his page, and this and that." And then sometimes
sales spike.
Yeah, we'll get little bumps in sales. There was, I think the first time it came out, we made like $1,000 in a weekend. It was insane. It was like his Etsy shop just got like inundated with sales. That was just like when it first came out. We don't get that anymore, unfortunately. But yeah, you'll see like, why is everyone buying this print like this week? And then I'll find out that, oh yeah, it's making the rounds again. So
I've heard a number of artists say they don't want to post their art on the internet because they're worried that would happen. That they are so concerned about the idea that someone would use their art in a way that was not permitted, that they don't want to even share the art in the first place. And I keep trying to convince them that this is potentially valuable, like that there's actual money in it.
Yeah. I mean, as long as, Omar has a following, so his people go, "Hey, I know that painting, and this is Omar's stuff," and put a credit line, and they'll be our little watchdogs for us, which is great. But not everybody has a following like that, so there's a lot of art that is being, I think, shared around, and the people aren't getting credited, and that bothers me. I don't like it when the art is not credited to the artist, because it's so easy these days. Do a Google image search and you can find out who did the painting.
Oh man, you're not wrong. I actually just found out this morning from Kelly McKernan that my art was featured on DeviantArt's Instagram. It got like 10,000 likes. Now, granted, when I posted the same art 2 months ago, it was like 600 likes or something. I guess, but they didn't credit me. They included all the tags that I included, but they didn't actually say, my name is there. But there's no, like, how much harder would it have been to just link to my Instagram account?
Right, exactly.
It's kind of the same difficulty the musicians are having, and thing where, and whether it's internet or whether it's 1950s in the radio, and it's like you hear a tune, and whether they catch the DJ saying whose tune it was or not, it's like if that tune starts becoming an earworm, it's all the better for the song. I mean, the point of building the song or the painting is to get it out there, and if people are liking it and sharing it and putting it onto websites you can't get access to, and it gets seen, some Chinese site goes ahead and puts it in front of 100,000 people, when it's like you print it, put it on your own little Facebook, you get, your relatives and friends only look at it, and it's like, great for the piece. And like she said, it's really easy. It's like, it's the same thing with music. If people really like, people like the image, but if people really are interested in the image, it's very easy to go ahead and Google image it and find out who the artist is. So it's, in my opinion, it's free publicity. And there's a bit of a danger if it kind of gets, corporate kind of takes it over and it turns into a,
Yeah, if they start making money off
an
of
idea
it,
point, yeah, and the whole someone making money off of your image and you're not
that's not
getting
cool.
that kind of credit point. But even then, that means that they're distributing that image even further, and it would, it'll get back to like who did that piece.
I think it's worth fighting for the credits where you can get them, but it's just like,
Yeah, you should always
Yeah.
fight for that, but I don't
Yeah.
think it's a bad thing that it's getting distributed in
yeah,
that
I totally
normal
agree.
kind of way. It becomes a word of mouth sort of thing, and it's just you do have to kind of sort of always kind of push and educate. A lot of times people just aren't clued into copyright laws and
Yeah.
just the basic etiquette of giving credit when credit's due.
We have a question in the chat wondering how much of your work for both of you is commission or freelance, and then how much is it just you guys doing your own personal thing?
For me, I'm just doing my own stuff. I mean, I get occasional like commissions, but mostly it's to do something that I already do. I guess I don't know how to.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of playing with mud. Because I find if I take a commission, like a specific project, I get too like bound up in it and it just kind of dies. So I find if I just do my own stuff, I have more fun and it's better work, I think.
Yeah, and if you can take a commission that's loosely structured, so it's essentially I want something in this direction and not very specific, it does become a lot easier to keep the magic on it. But occasionally I'd go ahead and get a couple of commissions a year, that are, usually it's someone's pet or someone's particular. They got a couple, and I have a beer label, a beer company in Ohio does pre-revolutionary ales. I've been doing label work for them.
Oh man, that sounds cool.
I'd like to see that and drink that.
Yeah, that the Laughing Pirate Fox image that I did a couple of years ago, that was the first one for that. That was for the porter, which was the most popular drink in the colonies in the 1700s. It was a porter, and he does a very Laxton Hollow.
Laxton Hollow.
Beer, yeah.
Laxton Hollow
in Ohio.
Brewery in Lexington,
Ohio. Yeah. Yep, lots of fun. But that's, again, it's like, and he ended up just finding me on the net somewhere in the computer land, and it was a perfect fit. He's into these, crazy old world animal characters that he's linking with stories into his beer brewing, and that kind of that's generally the kind of commission work, or even in that case, that's actual contract work, which I do very little of these days.
You say these days, is that something that's been a conscious change or something that's just developed?
Yeah, semi-conscious. It was like the first half of my career was commercial illustration and a lot of book cover stuff. And it was, I was literally getting to the point of, aside from building works for conventions, I wasn't picking up the brush unless I had a signed contract. It was getting to that point. It was like, wait for the phone to ring and go ahead and hit the deadline to the satisfy publisher, and it was kind of getting a little bit wrong. And then the recession was it 10 years ago or whatever, and that kind of shifted the market and the way publishers were working. And at the same time, I was building up enough of a collector base that took over, and so I was kind of done with that side of things of working for publishers and being essentially just a brush for hire. And a lot of the jobs really didn't feel like I fit quite right into what they were asking me to do. And so now it's a lot more of being able to freely explore my own direction, I guess. But you're more, but having to go ahead and build things more on spec in this case means that you're also second guessing what it is you're going to produce and looking at what did sell. And so there's a danger of trying to play it safe and just repeating your old ideas.
Oh man, yeah.
Hard, yeah.
It's like you think that the worst part about doing all your stuff on spec is the fear that it's not going is is it actually not making money? That like you do a bunch of work and then it amounts to nothing. No one buys the original, nobody buys the prints, no one likes it. I found that fear is mostly unfounded if you already have a following and you have an established style and a collection. But the fear of it not doing it and the ramifications of that fear are far worse.
The reality of the pace, because it's like, as you know, doing commercial work, you have a little bit more of a predictable income base than when you're doing things on spec. You know, it's like, yeah, the pieces, they will eventually sell, but you're having to go ahead and spend time building them and then spend time promoting them. You aren't getting paid at the end of the, you know, when you finish the painting, it's not necessarily when you're going to get that money back.
Yeah.
So you could go for a pretty long period of time without having any income and having to build more inventory looking for something that's going to catch the fish, which means that you're going deeper into the debt hole, waiting for something to sell and hoping that it will eventually sell. Because I have pieces, I've always had pieces that, you know, it'll take a couple of years to find the right buyer, but it's not everyone could go ahead and hold their breath for a year and a half waiting to get paid for that month's worth of work you did way back when.
Well, I hate to do it.
And that's kind of the scary part of that side of the self-employed, you know, when you don't have a guaranteed contract saying you will be paid.
I hate to do it, but I have a feeling that fans of the show are going to know that I'm going to bring up Patreon, because that's like the reason I love it so much. And I know
technical world.
You guys are probably looking at it and thinking about it and have feelings about it. I'm not going to pressure you on it, but it's actually one of the things that I really love about it. Well, the two main things are, one, the accountability. Sort of like you're hustling to try to get a piece done for a gallery show. And it creates a deadline for me that keeps me pretty honest about producing regularly.
Right.
Because I don't really get involved in gallery shows or anything that's got a deadline attached to it. But the other thing is that I have a predictable amount of money that I make every single time I complete a painting. And then there's the unpredictable, like, are the prints of this one going to sell, you know, is this going to be valuable as part of a larger collection, you know, holding your breath, wait. And the value seems to come eventually. But yeah, having that concrete value up front right in the month where you finish it, to me is, I even if that is not the majority of the value of the painting over its lifetime, I feel like as long as that is good, it's like better than a commercial commission. I actually value that ahead of, you know, potentially, you know, like print sales that could be worth 3 to 5 times as much.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you need to be able to pay bills every month. So having a mechanism that acts reliably and is predictable like that ends up, I think, reducing a lot of that financial anxiety, and it creates like a steady income stream that I think is, you know, essential for most people.
It also calls for a different style of working. And
no, I don't think so. I think it requires a very, like, I see people struggle with it the same way that people struggle with Kickstarter sometimes, of feeling that it feels too much like charity. It's sometimes I see, you know, there's talk about, you know, how much of an exchange it is between the artist and the subscribers who are supporting them. But I don't think that, I think it's a flexible enough tool that nobody needs to really adopt their working style or their schedule in order to use it. I think that it's flexible enough to construct a campaign that works to the artist's needs in those respects. But I mean, it certainly doesn't, you know, relieve it of any anxieties.
Because what do you I mean, you have to give something to the patrons.
No,
you don't.
No, actually, it's different. It's different. Yeah. It's different from Kickstarter in that respect, because the reason why I'm supporting like 50 Patreon campaigns, and the reason I'm supporting them is not because I love the rewards I get. I typically subscribe so low I get no rewards, but I know that if like a small percentage of everybody's fan base were to chip in a couple dollars of painting, that almost every artist I know would be able to live off of that money. And they wouldn't need to run a business on the side or have to take on commissions they weren't interested in, or have anxiety about, you know, where their next mortgage payment is going to come from. And so like, I'm so into that idea that I'm not only like trying to evangelize for the platform, but also like, you know, back a lot of campaigns, because what I'm getting out of it is I'm getting to see the art that's produced. Like, I think,
yeah,
if there's an artist,
that's part of it right there. It's like, I do not like to show stuff while I'm working.
sure.
You know,
I would pay you just to do personal pieces, just so I could see the work that came out at the end.
Yeah.
And I've been saying that about the artists that I've been following online for over 10 years now. And now the Patreon's around, I can actually just put my money where my mouth is and say, I will just pay you $5 every time you finish a painting. And if you can find another 500 people to do that, you know, you'll have $2,500 per painting every time you finish it, and you don't have to promise them anything other than the commitment that you'll do another one eventually. And I love that idea. I think and it's like, not everyone's got a following that could necessarily.
Yes, I have to do that.
You have to do it.
I wrote a series of blog posts. We do. Hey, let's promote here. We release blog posts every single week on onefantasticweek.com. This week I think we got one from Gavin Valentine about identifying your audience, and I did a 3-part blog series about Patreon, and the first one is how to launch a Patreon where you don't offer anything. And basically, it's just the story I told you. I mean, we don't really offer anything for the Patreon for this show, but there's a small dedicated community around here that's just happy we show up every week and we do this and we talk about this stuff. And some of them chip in $1, some chip in $10 an episode, just because they want to support the thing and see it continue to move forward. They feel that way about it. And
we also, in the chat, a number of people are saying that they'd love to see what you do with Patreon. So, you know, your followers are potentially interested in it. But
you know you have an audience, and you get those people come in from when stuff goes viral. I mean, that's actually the biggest hurdle for a lot of people to cross, to be able to do anything at all with Patreon.
But so, the contrast is, as someone who recently launched a Patreon, it is one more thing you keep up with. And
or it's one more thing you do instead of something else. If you needed, if it was working,
trying to go the other direction and do less. And that's one of the that's one of the beauties of this reality, you know, this century versus, you know, last century as an artist, is you do have a lot of options and a lot of tools to go ahead and re-identify yourself and get yourself out there. And there's, you know, depending on the individual, but this relying on one single silver bullet is usually means something's going to change in the career somewhere along the line. So you're going to leave.
Indeed.
Right. So having a lot of different sources, a lot of different ways of getting your work out. And I'm at that. I mean, that's why it's like I'm dipping my toe in the gallery stuff, which is kind of see how that works. You know, it's just a little weird having to go ahead and give 50% to a gallery, but the gallery also is doing their part. But it's you know, maybe use some version of a Patreon-y, Kickstarter-y
thing
or othery.
I really like Patreon. I think that
to go ahead
you do like the lazy
and actually talk on the machine. I mean, hell, I'm talking on the machine right now, and
you're on the internet right now. I hate to break it to you, but I think there's probably a super lazy version of a Patreon that doesn't make you very rich, but does make you a few $100 a painting. That probably wouldn't take as much work as Sam is putting into his, and certainly not as much work as
it's not always about the dollar at the end of the day. It's also just as keeping the career alive, that kind of ability aspect of it, and always communicating out there somehow.
I had someone ask me at the last convention I did. It was a father asking about his kid becoming an artist, and hearing you talk just now reminded me of it, because I said, I think right now is the best time to be a creative person of any genre. You know, like, sure, the multi-million-dollar Sony contract for your music album isn't probably going to happen anymore. But if you're a musician, you can reach so many people. If you're an artist, you can reach so many people. And there's so many jobs out there in the creative field if you want to go that route too. I guess.
How did musicians gig before the internet? Holy shit. And Omar, you were saying that you sat around waiting for the phone to ring, and I'm thinking there is a point where you were working, where it was literally a phone call.
It was literally a phone, and
yeah.
it's like try doing the promo thing, and that was, you know, that was just post where, you know, drop off your portfolio at the publishers, and an intern might or might not even open it, let alone actually get to an art director. So it was like trying to promote yourself into a publishing house was like ridiculous, and you just had to go with. I ended up meeting an art director at a convention, and that's how I got my foot in the door. And he talked to other art directors and allowed the art directors to network me in. And all I could do is literally just sit and, you know, aside from like, you know, putting things in things like Spectrum,
Yeah,
and those sort of
Spectrum,
publications back then when it
back
was,
in the day, Spectrum was a big source of work.
yeah, and
Yeah.
publishers, you know, and art directors were looking at those kind of books trying to find art. But now it's like there's so much artwork out there, it's hard to go ahead and get yourself heard or seen,
Yeah.
especially in a publishing world. But you literally just sit and wait for the phone to ring, like the phone. I remember the first time when it was like, you know, the internet, and it was like I ended up with one or two art directors. I didn't know the sound of their own voice, and it was really weird and a little bit odd trying to go ahead and coordinate projects, not actually physically talking to an art director.
I bet it would be. I mean, actually, the first time I got hired by an art director, they called me on the phone, and that was the last time. Yeah, I figure most of the people that are listening. Well, we've got a really diverse audience, so we have an audience of people of all ages. But I'm sure there's plenty of viewers out there who just like could not imagine the world in that state, because it is. We've just taken the internet so for granted, but it's so weird. There's so much competition out there, but there's so many vehicles to get your work in front of people, and like
the
even
drawback,
beyond that, just
the thing that makes it comfortable though is how much you end up getting in front of people too. And it's just, it's like the access point ends up being, it becomes very much personality game. And, you know, the camera in your studio, me on this, what the hell they call this thing?
there's a camera also.
Video chat.
Blogging chat, Skype,
Podcast,
I don't know. Yes, and that you know, even like, you know, work going viral without credit, that kind of sense of vulnerability that you're putting yourself and your work out.
I mean, it's like it's the undertow of the ocean of the internet. I mean, there's these huge currents that, you know, no human being has the ability to control, and yet we are all affected by them simultaneously.
Like you want to go and swim in that water, and it's becoming that is the way to get yourself there, is you have to start swimming in that water. And I guess that's where I'm at right now, because I'm shifting from, you know, commercial work to convention collectors, and now what else is there that I could go ahead and fish in, and it's becoming more and more evident that it's going to be some kind of dog and pony show on the internet while I paint.
Nah, you don't need to do that. The work speaks for itself. I mean, I really believe in the power of the work holding its own value. There's a lot of it
should be about at the end of the day, and that's what it's.
But there is I hear what Omar's saying, because there is that struggle of how much of me needs to be public in order to facilitate the work.
Because you become a brand in your own right.
Yeah,
as an artist, whether you're a musician or a writer or a painter, it's like it somewhere along the lines, the creator of the art and the art become identified as one element. And that's where it's like people go, I would give you $5 to see what the next thing you're going to come up with is. And you know, they're going to that source of, oh, that person. And if they could see more what that person's about and what they're, I mean, hell, we're chit-chatting with the creative people. We're not just doing a gallery slideshow of work, because you want to know what that person is, and you start identifying that person with the work.
Absolutely.
Internet, YouTube, blips are like getting more and more about, okay, what's the personality?
Well, the thing I've talked to a lot of people about this, and like there are some people who we've had on the show, like Ross Tran, who is a performer. He is an aspiring actor who believes, you know, very strongly in giving him the whole of himself to the camera and to the audience as a part of like a performative quality on top of the artwork itself. And then, we've had people on like Jamila Knopf, who has crafted a very specific identity on social media that isn't about her. As she doesn't post a lot of photos of herself. She doesn't post about what she's doing in her life. It's all about her taste, like the artwork she's making, the stuff that she's watching. It's all like a curated collection of taste. And so there's a personality, but there isn't a person.
Right.
And I think that both are viable.
And that takes a bit of work and self-realization to consciously view.
Yeah. Thankfully it's not so voyeuristic where we're all expected to be posing for selfies and be constantly streaming so people are hearing our voices. And it's a viable strategy. It's just thankfully there's more than one way to do this thing, and it's not entirely required, because I hear that concern over and over again. Mm-hmm. And I have that concern a lot myself, because I like to talk shop with other artists here on the video and audio, but I have actually found the experience of streaming my work and sharing a lot personal stuff on the internet to be very painful, and I don't like it. Mm-hmm. So I've figured out it's possible to avoid doing that and still succeed at this thing, which is I'm so thankful for. Otherwise, this would be just a murder show. I would hate it.
Speaking of murder shows, we're towards the end of this episode.
Oh yeah. Thanks for the confidence.
We close out by asking if our guests have a piece of advice they've been thinking about a lot recently, something they'd share with someone starting out, or just something that's relevant to what you've been doing. So if you guys would share just something for our viewers.
Got anything?
Sheila, why don't you start?
Oh, no pressure. Advice, I don't know. What's your
advice? You guys give advice all the time. You give advice to aspiring artists that come to the table, they're all starry-eyed. You got something canned in the back of your head to make them feel
general. Inspired. Just do what makes you happy. I work on my pieces, and I'm like playing with mud, and every now and then I just like burst out laughing. It's like, this is ridiculous. What am I doing? I'm making these silly little monsters for a living, and you just got to step back and realize that, it's fun. I'm having fun at it. And it's like, I worked for years doing graphic design, and I would come home and just like basically rip Omar's head off. And then I was like, okay, I got to stop doing that. So I started doing my own thing, and it's a lot more rewarding now. I mean, it still can be stressful, but I just do what makes you happy, and eventually the money will come. And
yeah, so I've always believed in the build it and they will come, or whatever that feel a dream thing quote is. But it's like you have to keep hammering away at it. And that ends up being one of the
there's no easy route. It's always
especially if you're doing what you love to do, or you think that's kind of cool, and it's to try and convince other people that it's cool too. Sometimes takes a lot of pieces to keep throwing at them until they kind of get the gist of, oh yeah, because it's a lot of times I see people, they give up too soon.
Yeah, they
give up on the piece too soon and don't push it to that little extra tweak, or they settle on, okay, here's my 6 pieces I did this year. It's like, no, I see the same stuff again and again in a convention or something, where it's like, yeah, I've seen that you've been dragging around the same show for the past 5 years. It's like, I try and go ahead and get at least 2/3 of a convention show new stuff. It's like using those things to always bring in new stuff.
Yeah,
because that's where you're going to start generating. It's like,
it's so true.
I have an idea, I have a flavor, I have something. I think this is really fun, and you got to keep on throwing out that sort of flavor. Otherwise, people kind of, oh yeah, seen that. It's cute, but not quite there yet, and then you just get lost in the flotsam and jetsam, and it's like, because there's so much out there.
Yeah, that's great. Both great pieces of advice.
It just takes a lot of work.
Yep.
That's why you gotta like it to some degree. Although it's kind of sucks that it's like, oh, I love what I'm doing. It's just so. Why won't it work though?
Yeah.
We close
away at the painting for 2 weeks, and it's still the best ring. But boy, I sure do love this. The headaches. Yeah. it's like rearing children, I guess. I don't know. That's why we don't have children.
So as we close out the show, where can
You
folks
love
find
it, but you hate it. It's so frustrating, but it's, you know, you got to have some kind of passion for it. Otherwise, you'll, you know, just burn it all.
So as we're closing out, where can folks find you guys online?
StudioRyan.com is Omar, and I'm SheilaRyan.com.
That's really difficult.
And
names
it's
to
our,
come
and
in.
then we got Facebook and Instagram.
And
I
Etsy.
don't know what the addresses are. Oh yeah, and the Etsy shops.
Etsy.
I was just checking out your Etsy shop. You got great prices on prints. I've got a bunch hanging in my house.
And go.
If people like Omar's or Sheila's work, they should go buy it. And subscribe to him on social media, because it's just like this constant avalanche of cool stuff. Sheila's put in a lot of hours making sure all that stuff gets posted. Next week on the show, we've got our very first CEO joining us. We have the Jack Conti, known for being a guitarist for Pamplemousse, is like one half of Pamplemousse, and also now the CEO of Patreon, a company which I am constantly upselling on the show. He and I got to hang out for a day, and that was really cool. And I couldn't believe the good fortune I had to go and meet him. And now he's coming on the show, and you guys are going to get to meet him too. He really cares about getting artists paid fairly for their work, and that's really cool, because I feel really strongly about that too. So we're going to shout about that a lot next week, and we're going to be doing it at a special time, 5 hours later than normal. So whatever time you are used to seeing us, it's 5 hours later. We're accommodating to his very busy CEO schedule, and yeah, that's going to be really exciting.
So that's
And
around 3 p.m. Central Time, where our normal time is 10 a.m. Central.
yeah, and then if you guys want to talk more, like, you know, this whole episode we've been talking about all these struggles of what it takes to, you know, be successful as an independent artist. If you want to do more of that with us in person, we are doing a workshop this November in Nashville, Tennessee, for 4 days, live in person. We're going to get a whole bunch of really successful indie artists in a room, and then we've also got instructors there too, and we are all going to be hanging out for 4 days, learning how to do this thing even better, because it is a damn struggle, and you need to hear a lot of different voices when it comes to this thing, because nobody's got the answer that's right for you. It's got to be a combination of solutions from all the different people that you've met, and learning from your peers, and from the people who have done this before you, and the people who are coming in after you. And it's always changing. And that's what we have, a social media talk from Kelly McKernan every single year, and every year it's different, because it feels like you could rewrite this talk every 6 months, with the way that all of the major platforms are constantly changing the rules and the priorities for everything. And it's just like one of the things that we do every single year is try to get people updated on the state of all of that. And then you should go check out more info about it at onefantasticweek.com. We've got a list of the instructors. We've got the schedule up. You can see all the talks that we're doing and all the work time that we're going to have with everybody there. And if you're still sticking around, you've probably already heard this pitch a billion times. So if this is like your 30th time hearing the pitch and you've been thinking about it a lot, just go there and go look at the sign up page. Sam and I are going to be going and talking to a lot of people about this in person at Gen Con really, really soon. Gen Con's like at the end of the month, right?
It's the beginning of next month, but yes.
Oh, Jesus. It's like 2 weeks from now.
Or more or less, yes.
Okay.
We don't have to think about it. Yay!
No, lucky you. It's so funny. Elaine, my convention manager, is in San Diego right now trying to do San Diego Comic-Con out of a half of a booth. And I am left to my own devices. Gen Con is the one con this year I am planning myself and taking care of myself. So this is when my re-entry back into the convention breach this year, because I feel the same way about them that you do. I couldn't do another whole year of conventions this year. Got to get back into the studio and work.
Fun though. It's fun going to them, to see people.
Yeah.
To see people in real.
Yeah,
that's the reason why this is the one.
That's the thing I'm really kind of going to be missing on that.
Yeah, I love the Gen Con crew, just all the artists that are showing there. It's such a great group of people. I'm really looking forward to seeing them. And I feel like every year you meet new artists
Yeah.
As new people are joining or people that have been there for a couple of years.
The other part is the convention community and what you're doing online with this community too, expanding that sort of thing. It's been very, it's a very supportive and very strong, and talking to people in other industries and other creative industries where there's a lot more backstabbing and a lot more climbing on top of the corpses of your peers. This community is very, very supportive, and it is a wonderful thing that we have.
Yeah, I feel like Sam and I inherited a really, really healthy, supportive community from all the fantasy artists that came before us, and we're trying to do our best to try to carry that forwards, because it'd be a shame if we were the ones that fucked it up.
It's all your fault.
All right. Well, I think that's it for this week. Thanks so much for joining us, you guys, and thanks for being so lively on this day. Sorry for getting started a half hour late. Technical issues. We had a good run for a while, but you know what? This is